This episode is brought to you by Squad OV, the best way to record, watch, and share your PvP gameplay.
It's April the 12th, 2022, and you know why you're here. So let's kick this off right and introduce the players. I'm Gerissar, a PvP Padawan.
Hey guys, I'm Bigmoran, and I'm an awful WoW PvP historian.
Hey, I'm TreesapJake, and I just love shamans.
You guys are awesome. Apparently, I saw the cursor start to move on the show notes, and it screwed up my brain. I couldn't talk at the same time.
I'm Padawan, a PvP Gerissar.
Yeah, I just about said that. That's awesome. Hey, how you guys doing? How you feeling, Jake?
I'm feeling a lot better, that's for sure.
That's awesome.
I had COVID for a while.
Yes, you did. You sound good though.
Yeah, it's done wonders to me. It's almost like it's cleaned me. So I've had it all regulated. No, I feel a lot better, to be honest. It was rough the first day back for sure. Like it was definitely like a difficult period, but I feel like almost back to normal now. So
glad to have you. And you're back to PvPing. I saw you got some videos out and everything. What were you up to? I mean, other than laying in bed and then recuperating for the first 2 weeks, what have you been up to the last 2 weeks?
Oh wow! What since recovering?
Yeah,
honestly, just trying to catch up. Like I'm so behind, and I'm trying to do like 4 different characters, and it's so difficult to like keep up with it. But I'm managing. I'm okay for the minute.
All right, ZK. Quick question: how many tier pieces do you got?
Oof, I've got 3.
3 tier pieces.
So 1 on 3 characters.
Oh, okay. So you're like chomping on the bit for reset tomorrow over in the EU.
Yeah, I am like 3. Yeah. So about guaranteed tomorrow 2 set for 3 out of 4 of my characters. So that's always good.
Well done. All right. And Big, what have you been up to these last 2 weeks, man?
Well, actually, I wasn't playing WoW for the first 2 weeks of the season, but I finally capped my vault for the past 2 weeks. So I'm very happy with that. But it was a chore and a half because, again, I was queuing into people who were basically fully geared, which was a bit rough. And so I haven't even completed my campaign type stuff. I don't have the Unity belt yet, which I'm not actually that upset about because I think it's actually kind of bad. Like the double legendary Forester Druid, it would require a long explanation. But, in that respect, I'm not too far behind. I did completely forget about the creation catalyst system though, and so one of my vault picks in the past few weeks was really bad because I completely forgot we were going to be able to convert those into tier pieces or convert season 3 gear into tier pieces.
Oh no!
I'm kicking myself in the butt for that, but other than that, been having fun. Despite being under geared in arena right now, I'm having a blast. And I will say this: my assassination rogue that I was queuing with, the first week we were queuing together was definitely a struggle. We were both under geared. But then he got his 2-piece, and boy, like it was night and day. Just having 2-piece as an Asa rogue, just the difference in queuing was insane. And he's gonna get his 4-piece today, and he already told me, he's like, "Bro, we need to queue some 2s," and I'm like, "Yeah, we do," because Asa rogue 2 set and 4 set is absolutely busted, and I think we'll have a fun time this week.
Nice. You gonna reach 2,400 overnight? Is that what's gonna happen?
No, I don't know if we get 2,400. We're currently at like 1,800 like current rating. I think about 2K MMR, and so we were struggling early because we had really bad gear. But I think once we catch up on gear, I'm anticipating a 2,400 in the horizon.
Nice. Well done. Well, I have to admit, I have been doing that much zeros, that much PvP. I was you guys, as I told you before, I built that MDI team, so we got access onto the tournament realm, and I was pushing some keys on live, and then we finally got the team together on the tournament realm, and having 4 pieces and 278 gear, it feels completely different. Like when you're geared out and you can have everything, it's a fun game.
Yeah, for sure.
So went on the tournament realm, and we had some really solid queue sessions trying to push. It was a bit of a struggle getting the team together before the time trials actually started. So we started like day 1 time trials, and there was varying levels of experience, I'll say, myself included, as a tank. And so unfortunately we just never got to timing 15 in either of the Tells of Esh dungeons. But it was an experience, I tell you. It was exciting. I want to get back in there and just keep trying and learning. But like some of the polls you need to do in order to meet the time, like 35 minutes goes by so fast. Like it's just bonkers. Anyways, but that's what I've been up to. I was pushing keys on Tournament Realm and pushing keys on live server. So
nice.
I might actually get Keystone Master this season. Maybe.
That cool mount. It's the coolest. I think you also get the ability to upgrade conduits to whatever the max level is. If you get Keystone Master, you can unlock that thing. So that's the best part. Who cares about the mount, right? No one needs that mount. Just to be around there for the conduits.
Oh yeah. I can't wait to get that thing. You get 279 conduit straight across the. Yeah, I'll be honest though. Every time I'm pushing keys, I end up getting like a conduit upgrade now. I have a feeling that it's going to be like everything else in this game, where by the time you reach that pinnacle, that level you're trying to reach, that thing you get is going to be obsolete, because I'm already going to have all my conduits to 279 probably.
Yes.
Or, it's like you see that purple item under reputation to get to Exalted, and by the time you actually get to Exalted to get that piece of gear, you've already gotten a better BIS in a dungeon or in a raid or something else because of the grind.
Exactly.
But hey, that's okay. Anyways, speaking of drops and gear, why don't we roll into the Need, Greed, and Pass and see what you got for us there today, Big?
This likely won't be a clean fight, so keep your distance, eh?
Yes, kick an distance. Let's do this. What do you got for the Need, Greed, and Pass?
Yeah, so since today's theme is all about Rogue Mage Priest, I decided to make the Need, Greed, Pass about Rogue Mage Priest. So there's obviously some signature abilities from each spec in that comp, with Chastise being arguably the most iconic priest spell in RMP, Kidney Shot being the most iconic rogue spell, and Polymorph being the most iconic mage spell. So I want you to think about which one of those you'd want on your character. So if you could just take your main character, and this assumes you don't play, either one of these classes, but I don't think any of us do, main, rogue, mage, or priest. So if you could have either Chastise, Kidney Shot, or Polymorph, which one would you need, which one would you greed, and which one would you pass?
Oh boy. That's a Well, let's hear.
Question.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so I'm gonna play it as a warlock. So playing as an affliction warlock. I'm gonna go with the poly. I'm gonna go with the polymorph.
Okay, well, it'll remove your dots. Do you want us to remove your dots, or? Because you have to think about that too.
Oh, wait, what do you got to do, man?
So,
I could polymorph the off target, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, you could also be playing Destro too if you wanted to.
That's true. But why would I want to play Destro? Oh wait, that's because Destro is super easy and pwns. Yeah, okay. So as a Destro lock, I'm gonna take polymorph. I'm gonna need on polymorph either way. Just the idea of having that polymorph, being able to turn somebody into how did they say on the Warcraft movie? It works on the feeble-minded. So take a feeble-minded humanoid and turn them into an animal. And then just because the idea of, as a warlock, I never want to get close to anybody. So I'm going to completely pass on kidney shot, and I'll greed on chastise.
Okay.
I prefer not to take chastise because holy magic. But like I said, I don't want to get close to anybody, so I have to pass on the kidney and take chastise instead.
Nice.
Those are mine.
What about you, Jake?
It's a hard one because as elemental shaman, technically, I can do all of it already. So I can lasso, I can cap stun. I'm going to pretend cap stun is the same as chastise, and I can technically polymorph. However, all of my versions are way worse than the RMP. So I am going to say I'm going to take it from an enhanced shaman point of view. We'll change things up because I'm playing a lot more enhanced recently. I think I'm going to need kidney shot because if I could kidney shot every single big Doomwinds go, or depending on which, I suppose spec I'm playing, just for the damage that we want to put out, then that would be absolutely insane. I'm gonna probably greed polymorph because being able to have something that's a bit stronger than Hex that doesn't break and where they, I can spam that would be amazing. And then I'm probably going to pass on chastise just because I don't think I don't know. I can't imagine. Well, I mean, unless Stormstrike reset the cooldown for chastise, like I suppose Smite does, then or other holy things, then I suppose I would take that. But I think I'm going to pass on chastise. I think those are my three options.
Okay, so as a Resto Druid, this is really tough because I think chastise is really broken for the current meta, where you can just kill people in like 4 seconds. You can kill people in the duration of a chastise. So you chastise a healer, you can basically set up a kill within that window. But also polymorph is insanely broken. I think spammable CC is just in general really good, and polymorph is arguably the best spammable CC. I mean, polymorph or cyclone. It's hard to make an argument as to what is actually better. So as a druid, it's tough because I'd want both chastise and polymorph. I think I would need on polymorph, just because I think that the potential is the highest for Resto Druid. Resto Druids love playing with mages. The mage druid synergy it feels amazing, and the part of that is because polymorph and cyclone don't DR, and so I think that would be really OP as a Resto Druid, having polymorph and cyclone. So I'm going to need on polymorph, and then I'm going to greed on chastise. I still think it's really insanely good. You could combo chastise into a cyclone, which would be insane. But I think just having a polymorph by itself is infinitely better. And then I'm going to pass on Kitty Shot because I already have Mighty Bash, and if I play Feral Affinity, I already have stuns. But I think, in general, I think the mage spell wins, and this is something I'm going to want to talk about in the near future in this podcast. Is I think understanding mages is the key to understanding RMP. But
really,
yes, I think.
I thought understanding rogues was the key to understanding RMP.
It depends on who you ask, right? This is the greatest political debate of. Even the RMPs debate this. It's like that Spider-Man meme, right? Every player on the RMP team is pointing at each other as to who's like the most OP. Like the mages are pointing at the rogues are pointing at the priests. It's crazy. No one knows who's technically the best on RMP, but hopefully we'll be able to explore that topic a bit more.
Indeed.
In just a second.
I'm really curious what the listeners want, though. Just a reminder for anybody who's listening, don't forget to hop over to our Discord and let us know in our channel there which ability you'd which one you'd pick, and let us know what class it's with, right? Don't just pick the ability, but let us know with which class you're going to take that with. I'd really like to see what the different combinations are. So head on over there and do that. And while the listeners are pulling over or taking a pause from the podcast to do that, let's move into the WoW PvP events so they can also find out what is coming up to do in WoW.
Get in there and fight! Stop hiding!
Yeah. Stop hiding. Get in there and fight. As always, we got Dalaran Gaming continuing to do his 5v5 1v1 duels. And a couple community events. New one. It's actually coming up this Friday. We got the Oasis Spring Fling. It's a 2v2 tournament over on NA. Sorry, EU folks. It's NA only right now. But hey, it's live. So hopefully you're geared and you got your 2 set at least. But if you want to send over there, it's so Twitter post is the link is in the show notes. But on top of that, if you want, just go over to the Oasis Discord, and you can sign up there as well. It's a team sign up, unlike before where it was always a solo queue. This one you actually have to sign up with a teammate. So it should be a fun go. They're definitely looking forward to doing that. And actually, one of the listeners, one of the PvP leaders over at Oasis, Overlord Moon, who's also been lurking over on our Discord and dropping a couple of videos over there. So if you want, go check those out. Other one, Matcherino. I said this before. It's just around the corner. We got the 10v10 tournament on the 23rd and the 24th of April. So link for that is going to be in the show notes as well. I'm pretty sure we're still looking for one more team to make a rounded 6v6. Well, 6 teams total. I guess 10v10, but 6 teams total to roll through all that. And official PvP or the official WoW events. So all the AWC Cups are done. We're going to be rolling into the MDI. I said time trials just ended, so the groups are going to be announced shortly. First group is going to be playing on the 22nd of April. There'll be those 3. Then there'll be the Last Stand tournament on the 20th of May. And just announced on the weekend is the AWC Circuit, which is going to be starting on the 28th of May. So that's going to do the top 8 teams for NA and the top 8 teams for EU, doing their round robin. And that's going to be 4 points to figure out, I think it's the top 4 that are going to go to the Ultimate Grand Finals and fight for the largest prize pool of the year. So that's going to be pretty good. I don't know if there's any other events. Do you guys know of anything else that we perhaps missed on this?
Not personally.
All right.
I don't think so. No, I haven't heard anything.
I'm not hearing anything. Okay. Well, I throw it back to the listeners. If you've heard of anything, let us know. Twitter, email, Discord, snail mail, OnlyFans. All right, maybe not OnlyFans. All right.
LinkedIn. We're pulling out all the stops.
Well, I tell them to go to Reddit, but yeah, we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there anymore.
Yeah. No. Reddit is banned.
Yeah. Or we're banned.
Maybe we're banned from Reddit.
We're banned. Yeah. That's all good. Hey, if anybody's wondering what we're talking about, just go over to the Technically PvP Twitter, and you'll probably see something over there. All right. In the meantime, let's have a word from our sponsor, and then we'll tack into this subjective analysis.
Wouldn't it be nice if there was an easy way to record and share your best gameplay clips? There is nothing worse than getting the coolest play possible, only to realize you forgot to hit the record button, or even worse, having to dig through 5-hour videos to find it. Luckily for you, Squad OV solves all of these problems. Squad OV will automatically record all of your best PvP moments and integrate them with your combat log to make it simple to find the best moments in every match. You can even make a squad with your friends to automatically share your recordings and watch their POVs. Register for free today at pvp.squadov.gg.
All right. Into the subjective analysis.
I'm gonna light you up, sweet cheeks.
There you go. Hey, I want to say just quickly, Jake, thank you so much for putting your sweet voice to that advert. It was so good.
I really enjoyed it. So dulcet, so soothing. It just makes you want to do it.
Indeed. On that though, let's actually talk about RMP. Well, hold on. So I was originally thinking that we could talk about like in general setup comps, but then I was kind of thinking so setup comps. What makes a setup comp? Well, a setup comp is a comp that you CC and then you kill into the CC. But I think that pretty much covers almost every single comp in Shadowlands now, doesn't it? Like it's with the bursty meta, it pretty much does everything. I can't think of a comp that doesn't.
It is kind of ironic because I think what Shadowlands did, and this is slightly changing now because, to give some context, the Shadowlands in season 3, the up until this point, every comp was basically a setup comp.
Yeah.
Right? You cross CC'd, you stun the kill target, and you killed within that stun. And that's generally how most comps arrived at their win condition. The one exception this season is Mage Lock. Mage Lock doesn't necessarily kill in stuns like other comps do. And in the past, I think Shadowplay, in season 1 and season 2, even though it wasn't that popular of a comp, Shadowplay kind of did the same thing, where they wouldn't really kill in setups, but they could.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, definitely right now, Mage Lock is not really killing in setups, but they could. And so I think right now, how I typically understand each comp in Shadowlands is that every comp has the potential to be a setup-based comp.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happens that RMP is the best at doing setups. So I think that's a bit of a clue as to understanding where a lot of the anxiety towards RMP and the public perception of RMP comes from, is the fact that every comp is essentially doing the same things in Shadowlands, but RMP is just the best at it.
True.
It's interesting you say that because sometimes when I think about setup comps, I've always thought about them with ones that kind of like perform sort of maneuvers. Like, so for example, I probably wouldn't put Ret Warrior as like a setup comp because they kind of like tunnel someone down. Although like one target's definitely getting CC'd, like kill target wise and everything like that. There's no like sort of like big maneuver. Whereas something like DK Boomkin, for example, where you could like grip into a blind and then into a go that way, like that's kind of like based around CC and a go rather than just pure output of damage the whole time. That's how I kind of always thought about it. And it's really interesting when you think about it that actually in Shadowlands, most comps can actually just, do that sort of like setup if they wanted to, like cross CC, bring everyone in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting.
The one comp actually I have to correct myself slightly. The one comp that's kind of an exception to the rule too is Jungle Cleave. Because Jungle Cleave really isn't a setup based comp. It's kind of more of like an attrition comp. Like the way Jungle Cleave wins is just by doing an insane amount of sustained damage that the enemy healer just eventually runs out of tools to deal with it. And it kind of does that through setups, right? The hunter does trap the healer or tries to trap the healer, but that's not really how it wins the game. It doesn't win the game in the setups. It kind of wins the game by just removing tools just gradually with damage passively.
Yeah.
And I think so. And ironically, Jungle Cleave is one of the comps that, depending on who you ask, is a counter to RMP. So it's just kind of interesting that the one thing that is slightly different is the one thing that does really well into RMP. But again, we can touch more on that later.
Just a question: would you guys consider Walking Dead as a setup comp, or more of a just an attrition DPS comp?
Because you have 100%.
Pardon me?
I was gonna say 100% a setup comp because it's all about those grip stuns, grip leg sweeps.
I was thinking that, but also, I mean, with the amount of damage that a Windwalker can pump out, I was just thinking like that alone is insane.
Well, I think if you think about it from like the kind of like origin of it, I can't remember when exactly it started playing it, but I remember playing lots of it in WoD for sure.
Yeah.
As Windwalker, like I don't know if that was when it became popular or not, or whether it would have become popular in MOP when the Windwalkers came out. But like it before, like Windwalker had sort of like I suppose, at least in WoD anyway, they didn't have as much of the damage as they would do now. It definitely felt like you were reliant on the go to create the pressure. So I 100% would have put Walking Dead as a setup comp. Like it's just that was the scariest thing about it, I think, in my head.
Okay. All right. Because that's how I remember it. But then again, Shadowlands, and like I said, just the amount of damage that you see a Windwalker put out, it's just been. I don't even know if it falls underneath that, because I feel like a Windwalker could just make somebody flop over without a setup.
Well, I think it's important to make a distinction here, because while every comp in Shadowlands is in many ways a setup based comp, it's how the game is won that kind of determines the flavor of that comp. And what I mean by that is RMP doesn't win on damage. It wins off of control. Whereas a comp like Ret Warrior, well, it does have a setup, right? They typically hodge the kill target, Stormbolt the healer. It's winning on damage. It's pressing, it's doing as much damage in that short window and relying on just that window alone to secure the kill. Whereas RMP is kind of more control oriented, where it does a lot of first of all, I should preface this by saying RMP does a lot of bursts. Like there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But it's typically, at least up until now, so Shadowlands Season 3 is kind of weird, and I'll explain that later. But up until now, you kind of need the control. The control comes first before the damage in RMP. Whereas with comps like Ret Warrior or Windwalker DK, it's almost like the damage comes before the control. It's like the damage is what kills in every other comp, but in Rogue Mage Priest, it's the control that kills for the most part. And again, there's kind of some Shadowlands Season 3 RMP is a bit different. And I can maybe explain that after I go over my history of RMP.
Okay.
But
yeah. Why don't we go into you've teased this about 4 times already in the intro? So
yes,
Big, go for what's your abridged history of RMP? Let's talk about this comp from the start.
So yeah, this is my abridged but possibly inaccurate history of RMP, because I'm relying entirely on memory, partially on some videos that I've watched recently. But anyway, I think it's in order to understand the current public attitude towards RMP, I think we should go back to the beginning and go back to the history of RMP itself. And that, of course, starts with the Burning Crusade. And I think what TBC gave us was the birth of comp archetypes. Of course, RMP existed in TBC, and it was, in many ways, a control-oriented comp, just like it is now. And I recently saw a video with Happy Minty, who used to play with Vinruki and Soda, and he was talking about this in the video, and this was like a 14-year-old video. He was saying that RMP, or Rogue Mage, wins games by just kind of outlasting their comp with outlasting an enemy team with control. Anyway, while RMP was doing this, you had other comp archetypes emerge, like WLD or RLD, so Warrior Warlock or Rogue Warlock. And then you had melee cleaves starting to emerge, which people primarily played things like Warrior Rogue or Double Rogue. And then you had sort of these early dampening comps with Double Healer. So TBC was really interesting because you had really the birth of the comp archetype. Comps like RMP won the game off of control and damage. WLD and RLD won the game just off of basically damage and attrition alone. Melee cleaves just won off of raw pressure. And double healers just won by mana bars, right? So I think that was a trend, that this comp archetype, this very different comp archetypes was something that existed for the majority of the early history of WoW PvP, and it continued into Wrath Lich King, where we had the dawn of the cleave, and you had way more wizard cleaves start to emerge, way more melee cleaves, and at the same time RMP was still a good comp, and it was considered almost like a cool comp because you had iconic players like Rekful playing it, Pooks, Orange Marmalade. So there was this public perception that RMP was kind of cool. It was kind of, this hip comp that was, one of the original OG cool comps to play. And it was up against all these new cleaves like Lock Shaman, right? The LSD won BlizzCon 2010, I believe. And, and at the end of Wrath, by the way, I think Mage Lock was widely considered to be one of the best comps. You had cleaves basically emerge as like the most dominant comps in the game, most popular, but RMP was just still really cool. It was just like, oh yeah, that's cool. We have all these really iconic players playing the comp, and that that pretty much continued into Kata, where again RMP was still considered this really cool comp, but now it was starting to appear more dominant on the ladder. Where really both in NA and EU, there are two comps at the end of Cataclysm that really defined the entire expansion, and it was RMP and RLS. And RMP was more prevalent on EU at the time, and RLS was more prevalent on NA. So here, public perception of RMP was still good. It was like, this is a cool comp, but the majority of the anxiety in PvP was being redirected to things like triple DPS. People are like, hate queuing against triple DPS. Things like that were kind of distracting people from really hating RMP, because there's things that are way more annoying, way more aggravating, and generally speaking, Warlocks were considered like the gods of Cataclysm. Like that, even though RMP was possibly arguably the best comp at the time, Warlocks are just way too good. So I think right now is an important place to pause, because up until Mists of Pandaria, the public perception of RMP was generally pretty positive. Mm-hmm. And I think RMP had a lot of, it competed with other comps, for sure. Like, it wasn't, without a doubt, the best comp. It was a good comp, but at the time, it was just like, it was considered a good comp. It's like, okay, you play RMP, that's cool. I play RLS, and there wasn't, this anxiety and this angst, this attitude, this public persona against RMP at the time.
I will say that a lot of people, I think, around that time were still like starting to complain how RMP was always like an S tier or a top tier comp since TBC and since the beginning, and just wondering if it was ever going to be dethroned as the best around that time. But I will agree is that I don't remember there being nearly as much commentary on social media, forums, all the other stuff about this comp as there is today.
I think it's so hard to, ever think that RMP will ever not be good, because, I mean, two of the classes have 3 DPS specs, and the priest has 2 healing specs. And as time goes on, one of them tends to be good, or at least better and workable, so the comp can still work, which I think is the kind of genius of it. It's, in my opinion, probably the apex comp of WoW Arena in that sense. And I think that's really cool. I remember actually it's so funny, because thinking about public perception of RMP is that back, I think it must have been season 1 of Shadowlands, when kind of like TBC Classic was kind of like a sort of like a whiff in the air. I was talking to a mate of mine, and we were just kind of going, dude, let's go and play TBC. Like, I'll play Mage, you play Rogue, we'll get a friend to play Priest, and we'll play RMP, it'll be amazing. And there's kind of like that whole, like, I was so excited to play RMP. So I think at that stage, I didn't quite hate it as much as I do now. So something must have shifted, So it's one of those things. And it does happen. I think it always happens when it's sort of like either just a bit obscene. I think comps that are just a bit obscene in the meta you just tend to get angry at them, kind of like MLH Pala in BFA. That was really annoying. So
yeah, and I think too, to continue on with the history up until this point, for the most part, RMP was Sub Rogue, and then in Wrath it was Sass Rogue, Frost Mage, and Disc Priest. It kind of had like this typical, like, it was associated with like single builds for those classes, that if you wanted to play Rogue, you had to play Sub, or to some degree Assass. If you wanted to play Mage, you had to play Frost. If you wanted to play Priest in PvP, you had to play Disc. And that carried over into Cataclysm. So in Cataclysm, again, RMP was a really good comp, and it was Sub Rogue, Frost Mage, and Disc Priest. And the same thing happened in MoP, where people were playing Sub Rogue, Frost Mage, and then Holy Priest, or they were even playing with the Resto Druid. But then in WoD, is when I truly believe that the public perception started to change a bit. And this is when rogues started to play combat. And so combat became the most prolific comp for rogues at the time, or the most prolific spec for rogues at the time. Mm-hmm. And this is when, at the beginning of WoD, I surely remember the 8-second kidney shots. People are complaining about 6-second kidney shots or 7-second kidney shots now. In WoD, it was like 8 seconds. Like, geez, Louise, we have a good now. But anyway, this is when RMP started to kind of break away from its origins, where the rogue started to play combat. And the comp kind of changed. And we talked about this just a second ago, but what happened in WoD, of course, WoD is the expansion where a lot of abilities got pruned, right? This is like, there's all those Holinka tweets, like, why did you prune this? Like, give this back. What happened in the late stages of WoD is the metagame kind of became pruned itself, where you had essentially 4 comps that dominated the entire ladder. It was Rogue Mage Druid, Turbo Cleave, which is Arms Warrior Enhancement Shaman. They typically play with the Resto Druid. Yep. Shatterplay, Frost Mage, Shadow Priest, Holy Paladin, and then Windwalker DK. Yep. These were like the 4 most dominant and prolific comps in Warlords of Draenor at the time. And like, if you queued ladder on any given night, there's a very high chance you're just purely going to queue into one of these 4 comps. So this, I think, is where public perception of RMP really started to change. And I think part of the reason was that rogues were playing combat. And combat was seen as like kind of unfair because it had this longer duration kidney shot. It had a red buff killing spree. It had all these tools that were like, gave it this enormous one-shot potential while also having a lot of control. And it was basically an arms race at the end of the expansion between RMD and Turbo Cleave, and this culminated in the BlizzCon finals of 2015? It was 2014, I'm sorry, where it was RMD versus Turbo Cleave in the finals, and that was like the pinnacle of WoW PvP at the time. It's like, who is going to win? I'm sorry, it was 2015. My timeline got messed up. Anyway. Okay. Yeah, RMD versus Turbo Cleave was the pinnacle of Warlords of Draenor, and it concluded at the end of BlizzCon 2015, where Turbo Cleave eventually came out on top, but just narrowly, like very narrowly. But I think this is the beginning of where public perception of the comp really started to change, and I really think it had to do with Sub no longer being the best rogue spec at the time, and rogue starting to play combat. And I think all like the PvP purists at the time were like, oh no, rogues cannot play Sub. Right, I'm sorry, they cannot play combat. They have to play Sub. It's a PvP spec, right?
Yeah. If it's not Sub, it's not RMD.
Yeah, if it's not Rogue, if it's not Sub, it's so. But yeah, and this again continued into Legion, and what happened in Legion is Rogue started playing Assassin, Mages started to play Fire. So the reason I bring this up is because I think this is the point where the comp, the pure RMP comp, the Sub, Frost, Disc Priest, really started to diverge from its original form. When rogues were playing Assass, mages were playing Fire, suddenly you had a rogue mage that was vastly different than the rogue mage that existed up until that point. And remember, rogue mage was like the cool comp, like when people like Wreckful or Pooks or Orange Marmalade played it, suddenly you had people playing Assassin Fire. It's like, that's not like Wreckful, that's not like Pooks, that's not like Orange Marmalade, this is something different, right? And so I think this is where in Legion, public perception of RMP really started to change.
So I have a question, and this is to both of you guys. How much do you feel that in the PvP scene, where we're so used to, everybody calls it the scripted play, but it kind of is like where you're so used to playing against a comp, you're so used to knowing what it brings, that when there's a massive change like that, such as going from Sub Frost to Assassa Fire, and essentially then as a team against that, you have to completely relearn how to play against that. how does that feel? Like, does it feel fun, or does it feel like really like a not like this? Like, why? If Blizzard hadn't screwed this up, like I would know what to do, but now I don't know what to do, so now I'm dying to it, and now it feels crappy. Like, is it that, or is it like, is it challenging? Is it like, oh hey, something new, so I get to learn this something? Like, I'm gonna throw it first to you, Jake. Like, what does that feel like? Like, and then how do you react to a change like that?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing I remember is, and I remember it so vividly, was when we had that change from Warlords to Legion. Lots of things changed. Specs changed. Survival became melee. Combat went to Outlaw. Lots of stuff like that. A lot of things ended up sort of like flipping around. Demonology changed. They lost their demon form. That went to Demon Hunters. And there was just a lot of change in there. And I remember that being very, very strange. And I kind of remember doing Arena and sort of later end of Legion, kind of thinking sort of this is so strange with how like the comps that I was sort of used to playing with and the comps that I'd like to play, which kind of felt like they were kind of turned up on their head. And I think that was sort of kind of the beginning of it. And whilst I loved Legion as an expansion, I thought, it is something that you kind of, at least I struggled with, and I struggled with for a long time because I'd done high-end RPGs at the end of WoD, and I loved that. And I'd went into Legion, and I knew nothing. It was everything had completely and totally changed. And then it was only really by the end of BFA did I kind of get my head around sort of what had gone on in that sort of time period. And the game almost became something entirely different. And I do think that WoD is sort of like the last, for me at least, the last expansion that had that sort of like semblance of an older WoW. Even if the graphics updated and stuff like that. So, that's my opinion on it. So it's just sort of, it's a hard one. It's a hard one to kind of.
So did you feel frustrated? Were you mad and angry at that, or did you find that as a challenge that you took on and lifted yourself up on?
Well, I ended up playing alts. That was the first time I ever really played alts, because the thing is, I'm terrible at leveling, or I was at least. Really bad at leveling. I could not level to save my life. And I think in MOP is when I leveled my shaman, and I was mostly playing shaman. I'd played a few other little things, but in Legion I sort of ended up kind of swapping back onto DK a little bit, and I just played around like that. And I sort of did that for a bit, and I did the same thing in BFA, where I just kind of like I sort of like messed around the different alts until I finally got back to shaman. And after I spent more and more time and realized, hold on, I actually just need to play the games and not feel like, oh, I can't do anything. I just, you just have to get in there, play the games. And suddenly I felt like I adapted. And it was like a sudden change. I think BFA season 4, when I was grinding, I can't remember what the currency was that allowed me to like buy stuff. I think it was sort of like corruptions or from the vendor or something like that. There was some sort of currency that I could get that dropped from Arena. And I remember grinding that so much that I'd end up doing like 2,000, 3,000 games before I'd even properly got fully geared and started. And I felt like I knew the meta, and I knew how things were going so much that it kind of really helped me with my own pushing. And that's when I felt like things going. So whenever I think to myself, this is crap, I just need to just keep going and just keep pushing forward, because you'll get the experience that you need in order to actually, make a mark. But it is hard. It's like hard when things change, I think. But
I think piggybacking off this, I think one of the changes that low-key has helped define the current RMP is a change to the combo point system. So back up until Warlords of Draenor, so up until MOP rather, if a rogue had combo points, it was only on one target. If you wanted to kidney shot the priest, you had to build 5 combo points on the enemy priest. You couldn't use those 5 combo points on anyone else. They're locked to a single target. And in Warlords of Draenor, combo points became, I think it's Warlords of Draenor. Again, this is going off of the history in my head. That combo points became attached to the individual player. And so for a comp like RMP, if you wanted to play sub RMP, this became much easier, because you could use your kidney shot on an off target, for instance, and immediately start shadow dancing on the kill target, and you weren't really punished for that. Whereas in the past, In Mop, you had a spell called Redirect. You could redirect your combo points to someone else. You're kind of locked into attacking a single target. So the win condition of RMP was really, really telegraphed, especially since, again, most people were playing Sub up until this point. Sub had a 1-minute Shadow Dance cooldown. Frost Mages didn't really have that crazy of offensive CD. And they had like Alter Time and Icy Veins, and you alter your procs and Miss Pandari. In any case, it was very obvious who the RMP was going to be attacking, which is very different than the RMP of today. So I think what tends to frustrate a lot of people right now with RMP is when they're doing their 3-2-1 cross CC setup, it's not very clear who they're attacking, because the rogue can use his combo points to kidney whoever he wants. The mage can DB whoever they want. The priest can chastise whoever they want. So you kind of have like multiple options every single kill setup. And I think that's what's really frustrating when queuing against RMP, is you really don't know who the hell they're going to go on. Like, you can kind of predict it by looking at your team's defensive cooldowns. You kind of maybe have to anticipate, okay, the RMP sees that we don't have Trinket on our Warrior, so they're probably going to go our Warrior. But you really don't know for certain who they're going to go on in any given setup. And I think that kind of puts players in this awkward position where they have to prepare for the impossible. They have to prepare for many different scenarios to play out on a single given setup, that it just becomes overwhelming to do that over and over and over.
Sorry, chat right now is saying that you can tell who RMP is going to hit now. It's easy. But I think that's contrary to what you're saying. I think you're saying that if you can see, if you look at your defensives and who's doesn't have a trinket and not, then I guess that's the easy part, that you can tell that they're going to go on that at the go. But I
think it's easy. It's only, you're only able to tell, I think, depending on who's got what CC. So a lot of the time you'll know that like a rogue, okay, so the rogue's gone for a cheap shot on the healer and has shadow stepped back to someone. Okay, so what they're doing is they're just setting up for a polymorph onto the healer, so they guarantee it. Like if it's I don't know, something that can kick it or stop it, like maybe like a Residruid cheap shot into like a ring or something like that. You know that there's that's when the CC chain is coming. I think the problem is that it's coming, but it's kind of like knowing when you're going to die, because it's sort of like if you haven't got the cooldowns and it's coming and you can't stop it, then it's just over at that stage. And I think that's kind of like a bit kind of demoralizing for me, at least, because it can be a bit sort of like out of nowhere almost. But
well, it's really interesting because like RMPs have made an adaptation this season compared to last season. Last season there is the memes about the 3-2-1. So the rogue would kidney shot the kill target, priest would chastise an off target, mage would DB sheep another target, and this is like how every RMP set up. And if you could just do this really well, that you could get really far just playing arena like this. What you're starting to see this season, and if you watch the AWC games, is that the setups seem very janky. Like even the best RMPs are doing these really janky, weird setups with like stuns. And the reason they're doing that is because right now, at least at the highest level, teams are anticipating that kidney shot will be used on the kill target, polymorph, a DB poly on the healer, chastise on an off target. Teams already know this information, so they're planning around that. So RMPs are starting to adapt by kind of doing things randomly. So I encourage people to watch AWC games with RMPs, because it seems really awkward. Like where the rogue will cheap shot 2 targets, and it's almost like the rogue just kind of waits and sees what happens and then decides who to hit. Like the rogue will cheap a healer and then cheap a DPS, and then there'll be this like really awkward pause where the team figures out, okay, how did the team respond to what we just did? Okay, let's make a decision really quickly on who to actually attack. And it's almost like, again, people develop technology. This is what Jake was talking about earlier. Is one of the frustrating things about RMP is it's almost like they're always developing technology to make the game harder, and then comps have to adapt and figure out what the RMP technology is, and then the RMP responds to that adaptation. And we're seeing that literally live right now. If you watch the AWC, is that RMP setups seem really messy. Like it seems like what the hell are they doing? Like, they're not doing a clean 3-2-1 cross CC setup. It's because teams at the highest level are really good at predicting when the 3-2-1 cross CC setup is going to happen. So the RMP has to adapt by doing these really janky, weird setups. And so you kind of have this like constant evolution of the metagame where RMP is almost always in the driver's seat, where it can really determine how the metagame is played specifically in its own matchups, but really in the metagame as a whole.
Okay. I feel like I completely took your history lesson off the rails, and I apologize for that, Big, by asking that little question about the changes and how people feel about that. Do you want to go back to kind of talking about some more of the perception from BFA into Shadowlands, or do we want to start talking more about Season 1 RMP and kind of unpackaging what you just talked about the this basic arms race between the technologies that RMP has developed and then what people are using to counter that and how that plays out? Okay, I'm going to let you decide.
Well, I think,
this is your...
Yeah, I think, like, in general, the public perception of RMP has gotten worse, but I think it really started to get bad in Legion when RMP would kind of emerge, Rogue Mage would emerge as like the most dominant comp. And in BFA, it would win BlizzCon with Frost. I think it was sub. I think Waz was playing sub in the BlizzCon finals of 2019. But in any case,
I remember now.
Yeah, in any case, what started to happen was the comp kind of diverged away from its pure roots, and it started getting all these tools to make its setups less telegraphed and its setups more powerful. And again, the game started to sort of gravitate in the direction of setups. Like, if your comp is unable to lock someone down with a stun or something, pump a lot of burst damage into that target, it's probably not a good comp. And I mean, that's the case in Shadowlands right now, is if your comp can't do that, again, with the exception of Mage Lock, it's probably a bad comp. So RMP, up until this point, was just a comp that was best at just locking down a target, doing burst damage into that target, and then winning the game by repeating that over and over. And other comps couldn't really compete with how well and how consistent RMP was able to do that. And I think that is where we are at right now in Shadowlands, where RMP is probably the best comp. Like, I don't think there's many arguments that RMP is not the best comp. And I think that that's kind of frustrating for players because RMP has been such a good comp for such a long time. And as the game has evolved, these archetypes, these comp archetypes that used to exist in the past, aren't really that existent now, right? Like, geez, think of a dot comp. Like, who plays? Sorry, but like, who plays like Affliction Warlock? Affliction Warlocks are dead, right? Like, you don't kill people by dotting them; you kill people by one-shotting them in Shadowlands. You know, and so RMP just happens to be one of the best comps at just one-shotting people. And it's been that way for quite a long time. So I think that's, again, where people tend to hate RMP.
See, this is where I'm going to disagree with you. That I don't think it's just that. I think it's the fact that when you're playing into RMP, you have to play almost perfect. You have to play perfectly, pretty much. And if you mess up, you're dead. Versus RMP can mess up a few times and still recover and still win, which kind of feels like, you know, that's like playing golf against Tiger Woods and hoping that Tiger Woods breaks a leg, but you know it's not going to happen. And even if he breaks a leg, I mean, we've seen it. He shattered his wrist and he still like won a Masters or something like that, right? Come on. Like,
yeah.
Like, thing is that that's kind of like what Big's been saying though. Like that perception of how they've been able to do that is something that is quite new. That is the, like, for example, like I played a lot of TBC Classic Arena, and you know, although like Rogue has got an incredibly short cooldown on Cloak in TBC, and everything like that. Neither mage nor rogue can heal themselves. They've got very small amount of cooldowns to do stuff. Like the barriers aren't massive. You can purge a lot of it off. And priests, for example, can like master spell, willy-nilly if they like, and get that all sorted. And I think there's just the whole concept behind it. It doesn't feel like like it's that much of an issue. Whereas nowadays, the conduit that allowed rogues to sort of get clean re-stealths was infuriating. And I know, as a shaman player, it's like I literally, and I used to say this as well. I said this in BFA when I was doing twos. Is that in twos, when I was up against Asa rogues, I knew that if I did not play perfectly every single game, it was a guaranteed loss, just because like if I don't play perfectly, like they will just 100% destroy me. Whereas these guys would mess up all the time, and I'd have to really try hard to culminate on that. And that was just like that was just like one of the hardest things, and that was just how it is. And I think that's what you're saying is true, but that is unfortunately endemic of the new changes and that new idea of RMP.
Well, yeah, and I think that's kind of what I'm saying, like understanding that there's this build up and over time. I'd say in Shadowlands, I think the perception isn't just over time, this build up and then the changes of Fired Asa and now just where we're at right now. But I think it's also the fact that it's in Shadowlands, just because of board power mechanics, the conduits, just the tankiness of the mage, plus the burstiness, the control, and just like you said, like or I just said too, the ability for them to screw up and still win just feels so insurmountable when you're so stressed to make sure that you don't screw up one little iota or else you're going to lose, versus they can screw up 5 times and still win. And I think that's the ultimate pinnacle of why everybody's like, screw Rogue Mage, this sucks, right? But
yeah,
I think here's the question: why doesn't other people just play Rogue Mage if it's that damn good?
That's the $1 million question that I challenged anyone who complains about RMP who's playing on the AWC. It's like, why don't you just play it yourself?
Yeah.
If it's such a good comp, just bite your ego and play the comp. I think that's the problem, though. Is I think people have such strong feelings, especially competitive players and tournament players. They have such strong feelings against Rogue Mage that they don't want to play it. They don't want to be seen as like the Rogue Mage players.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of unfortunate, because RMP is a fun, to be honest, it's a fun comp. Like it is the fun comp to play in WoW, because you do all the PvP things. You cross CC, you burst, you run away, like you live. Like you're doing a lot of PvP type things. And so that's the thing that's mind-blowing to me, is like, if you're going to hate RMP, just give it a try. It's pretty fun. And again, I think though what you just described, I think is the perfect kind of, it captures exactly what the problem is with RMP right now, is that it's way too forgiving defensively. And I think this has a lot to do with how tanky mages are. Like, especially now, mages are insanely tanky. A lot of mages right now are playing Blink Stun. All right, so they're playing normal Blink, and they get a talent where every time they blink, they automatically get a Blazing Barrier. And they have a conduit that reduces the cooldown of Blink to roughly, I think, 12 seconds. So every 12 seconds, a mage can blink and get a barrier, and that barrier will heal them because of another conduit that for damage they take during barrier, it heals them for a certain percentage. So it's like, mages are insanely tanky right now. You cannot really punish a fire mage. You're forced to punish the rogue, and the rogue can trade cooldowns really efficiently with the Holy Priest, because Guardian Spirit is a 1-minute cooldown in most cases, and if that's not enough, the priest can play Ray of Hope to prevent the target from dying. Basically, RMP has so many like get out of jail free cards defensively that it makes its offensive toolkit just that much stronger. Like, you think about like characters in video games are kind of like the ninja characters where they do a lot of damage, they kind of annoy you, but they die really quick, right? That's not the case with RMP. It's like the ninja plus the tank at the same time, which is I think where again a lot of people really get frustrated because it seems unfair. It's like, well, how can this comp have all this power offensively and also be this good on defense? It doesn't make sense, and I think people get really frustrated with that.
Indeed. It seems like we stirred the chat room a little bit because there's some good conversation going on. I just want to bring up this one new listener is saying literally the only reason why RMP is OP right now is because of Holy Priest is OP. So here's, do you guys feel that that's true? Like it's because of Holy Priest, or would you argue that it would be maybe not as OP, but similarly S tier if with any other healer?
I just think if you look at the way that other comps work, like Windwalker Fire Mage and Ellie Fire Mage and stuff like that, that make them so strong. For me, the common denominator is Mage, and I think that Mage being strong and certain like mage comps being strong or mage classes being specs being strong is a big reason why these comps work. I mean, if that was the case, if that wasn't the case, if it was really the Holy Priest, in my opinion, then RMP I don't think would be as strong as it is, as dominant as it is. It's because every single one of these classes has something absolutely incredible about them, especially at the minute, and that's what makes it so ridiculous right now. And I think that's just my opinion on it. Like it's hard to pin it down. I mean, Holy Priest being strong doesn't makes it part of this incredible, makes it as incredible as it is. But I don't think that's the linchpin.
Yeah, I tend to think that the sub rogue is the worst part about RMP. Like it's the least impactful part about this comp archetype. I really think it is primarily the mage. And I think if you ask any person who plays sub rogue, like who is the carry on your team, they'll pretty much always say the mage. And I mean, this is kind of true by just looking at the ladder. Like, look at what comps sub rogues have available to them. They pretty much only have RMP. You don't really see sub rogues playing comps other than rogue mage because they really need that mage or they really need that holy priest in order to do well. You're not seeing like Affliction Warlock sub rogue. Like, you don't see comps like this at all because the rogue really needs the mage in order to do the rogue type things. And I think, mages fire mages and holy priests can exist in different comps. Like as Jake just mentioned, Ellie Mage, like that's a really, really good comp right now. Or they can even exist in Mage Lock. Like MLP is a really popular AWC comp, and that's Holy Mage Fire Mage. Or Holy Priest Fire Mage. And I really think the backbone to that is the Fire Mage. Fire Mages are just so unbelievably good in Shadowlands because they're so forgiving defensively. They're just tanks. Like they don't really die, and they just have unlimited control with a really short cooldown on Dragon's Breath, a really short cooldown on Counterspell that gets reduced by a Conduit and Shifting Power. They have just so many things that just make them these unkillable offensive gods of Arena. And when you put that with the best healer in the game, Holy Priest that has really efficient defensive cooldowns and a lot of tools to survive from being trained and from getting CC'd, you just have the makings of like a really good comp. And I think really the backbone of that is the Fire Mage plus a little bit of the Holy Priest. And I don't think the sub rogue is that big of a contribution. And I think the proof of that is that people are in AWC sometimes playing with assassination rogues and doing, just as good. And I think, again, it's just the fact that they have a mage and a holy priest on their team to really sort of carry that defensive role, that rogues are just really able to flourish as both a sub and a sass in RMP.
I mean, a prime example of that is Waz swapping onto Outlaw. In the AWC.
Yeah, I think right now rogues are kind of in a weird position because like all their specs are really good, but like they in many cases are just encouraged to play sub RMP because it's just by far the best. Like it's difficult, rogues right now. I kind of feel bad for them because I think probably a lot of them are bored of playing sub, but they probably have difficult times finding queues as a sub rogue and any other comp besides RMP. Like no one wants to play, I don't know, Thug Cleave. Like no one's playing these comps. People are just all playing sub RMP if you play sub.
Well, I think that's always with the latter meta where people gravitate automatically to the stuff that feels the easiest to win on. Partially in perception. You know, whatever people are complaining about the most is likely the one that's easiest to win on. So let's just play that.
Yeah.
It's our thing is though, I would love to feel sorry for rogue players, but I have such bias that I don't think I can. So no, but I think
can't find it yourself.
I'm trying to justify it, but it's very difficult for me at the minute. But I think. So you go.
I was gonna say let me attempt to justify it for you, because I think like RMP is a perfect culmination of all the things we really hate about WoW PvP. Like we hate being stunned, right? It sucks to be stunned. You hate because every time you're stunned, you're like, man, I wish I wasn't stunned right now. Like, it just feels bad. And like, if you're a melee player, you hate mages because they just Nova you, they DB you, they have so much control over the game, and so. It became a meme, I think, in Cataclysm. People started saying, I can't control my character. But in Cata, you can control your character a lot more than you can control it now. And I think, like, right now, there's periods of the game where you just feel like, man, I cannot do anything. Like, I'm just stuck in this DB, I'm stuck in this Nova, I'm stuck in this Ring of Frost. I cannot play my character. And I think, like, that it kind of, RMP, in many ways, kind of echoes to the general things we don't like that happening to us in PvP. We don't like to feel controlled, and RMP just happens to be the best at controlling people.
Yeah, I don't think anybody enjoys sitting in a stun without being able, and nobody else can save you, and you're just like, you just take your hands off the keyboard, you're like, I'm dead. That doesn't feel good. And I think the thing that doesn't, like, again, it goes back to it feels even worse when you've played as best as you think you can, and you've seen mistakes made on the other team, and you're still dead. I think those two culminate into that really crappy feeling of, it's like, it just doesn't feel good. But I agree. I mean, I don't know how many times playing my warlock and dying to some rogue in a stun, because duels, 2s, 3s, RBGs, doesn't matter. Like you just got, I felt like a can of tuna getting opened up by their daggers. Like it was horrible.
It's even like the sound of cheap shot, the sound of kitty shot. Like you hear those things and they just like ignite like a primal response. Like the hair on your neck stands up when you you hear that cheap shot, you hear that kitty shot. Like oh no. Like, what's about to happen to me?
The worst part is when you've got the record for Resonator and all you hear is as three of them kind of jump on top of you, and you're just like, oh well, I'm just going to take my hands off the keyboard now.
Yeah, exactly. I actually had sorry guys. I had a question, because this often comes up on Twitter. Is the question of, does RMP have a high skill cap, or a high skill ceiling? And I tend to argue yes. I think RMP has a very high skill ceiling, and with that also it kind of in many ways has a low skill floor too. So I think that is another reason why the comp is publicly perceived as being this evil comp, because it has a lot of potential, and at the same time it kind of is fail safe so long as you have kind of this basic skill level. But I'm wondering, what do you guys think about the skill cap, or the skill ceiling, skill floor of a comp like RMP?
I think if you're ever in doubt that RMP is difficult to play, go try and play it. And that's a humbling experience. I'll tell you, because I've tried, and even playing Rogue, like there are some aspects to it that are difficult. And I think it's more along the lines of the nuances. And I think when you play against it, it's very easy to be like, it must be so easy for you being able to just get out there. And I definitely have raged, because whenever this rogue vanishes, when I've got all my dots on him, or it vanishes when I've got so much damage pumping into him, and he doesn't pop up again, and he's in Africa now, and like, it's just, nobody can find him, and that's incredibly annoying, and it seems to always be that way. There are nuances to the way that the game is played and the way the character's played and the setup is played. That require certain amounts of skills, and I think when you see a really good RMP play, like Kungana in AWC, Waz, Raikou, and Meh, like it is a beautiful thing to behold, and it is wonderful. I think there are certain parts about those classes in particular individually that are very easy now, especially maybe Holy Priest, and certain aspects of the newer mage specs with the way that fire works and stuff like that. But I think to get the comp to work at a higher level and not just get absolutely thrashed, because we've crushed some RMPs in our time, I think that requires the nuance of skill. I suppose most setup comps will require that. It's kind of beyond just pressing those buttons. It's like a 4D chess, I think, is probably the best way of explaining it.
Yeah. Gerissar, what do you think about the skill cap of RMP?
So I think anything that requires a coordination between 3 players to all do something at the same time needs to be acknowledged as having difficulty. If anybody's tried to do anything in World of Warcraft with other teammates, be it PvE or PvP, that requires everybody to do something at exactly the same time, that in itself is its own skill floor. That's my first take, which I think is the part where Jake was kind of saying, is that I think if anybody says that RMP is easy, go play it, because I think you'll find that there's some difficulty there in just trying to get all of that to work, and the fact that you're ultimately trying to hit a moving target, right? The other players know what's coming. They know what they can see it coming, so they're going to try to avoid it. So then you have to be able to adapt on that as well. Which then brings the second skill floor of you're on a moving floor of trying to do this. I think ultimately though, the real test comes to those higher levels. Once you start hitting the 2200 plus level, where you're playing against players that or you're going to be starting running into a lot of those players that can more easily adapt on the change. It's 4D chess, like you just said. It's everybody can learn the opening moves to chess. Everybody can learn that initial 3, 4, 5 piece move, but then once you start running into people adapting against you, then that's when the real rubber hits the road. And I think that's where the skill ceiling really comes in, of knowing, just because your let's say your cheap shot is ready, doesn't mean necessarily that the mage is ready, or knowing that, okay, I'm going to cheap shot, or I'm gonna sap, or I'm gonna vanish sap, but nobody go, because we're gonna see what they do, right? And see if we can bait bait something out, right? And do all that adaptability and communicating and know how to do that. And I think that's, again, it's that playing with other people, being able to communicate that and adapt on the fly to people that are adapting to you, and be able to make that work in a team setting. And I think ultimately that's where you really, what we're talking about is that's the real difficulty of getting everybody to work together. And that's the skill ceiling.
I think if you want to view RMP as an evil to this game, I think you should view it as like a necessary evil, because I think what RMP is ultimately is an execution test. It really tests your skills as a player and as a team. And I think the sort of in many ways has, in the same respects that there is kind of a rating inflation every season in WoW PvP, I think there's kind of like a hidden skill inflation that is kind of, it exists in the community. Every time you queue arena, like the people you're playing against are going to be better and better as this game progresses. And I think RMP does a really good job at sort of driving the narrative in terms of how the game can be played, at really pushing the limits of WoW PvP. And I think it's really interesting to be in that position because, again, RMP is just giving you new challenges and new obstacles that you have to overcome. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It might be frustrating, Of course, it feels bad to lose when your entire team is getting CC'd, but it presents you with a sort of dilemma that you need to solve. How do I overcome the situation? And the answer shouldn't be, well, I just can't, RMP is too strong, I can't do anything. It's like, well, no, let's think of the ways that we can really get around the fact that our entire team is going to be CC'd in the next 15 seconds. We need a way to deal with it. And I think right now in Shadowlands, the evolution of the meta has really been driven by RMP. What people have started to do, especially at rank 1 ratings, and the highest echelons of the ladder, is pre-use defensive CDs. So they're not using CDs the moment that the enemy team pops defensives. They're using their cooldowns defensively in order to delay the setup from a comp like RMP. They're like pre-iron barking, pre-pain suppressing, pre-barrier, pre-using barrier, whatever defensive cooldowns they have. They're trying to delay that setup. And I think like that's a really interesting adaptation of the metagame, is that people are so good, people become so good over time, and comps like RMP are just so good that you have to find these little tiny advantages where you can. And I think that's kind of where RMP is this necessary evil, or just constantly forcing you to be a better player. And I think that's what makes RMP so important. And I think, again, obviously what makes it so controversial.
I don't disagree. Sorry. I'm also reading everything that's going on in chat, because there's some... You think we're having a lively conversation. You guys should all be in chat right now. Holy moly. Loving it.
I watched it.
Pardon me?
No, I'm looking as well. I'm kind of all captivated by how much is going on. I love it when everyone's got a lot to say. I think it's awesome. Like it's
I love the engagement. I love the engagement.
I think it's like the politics of WoW PvP. Like, that's where attitudes really start to come out. Like, you drink a beer and you sit with your friends and you're like, let's discuss RMP. Like, that's when the real emotions start to fly.
Tell me how you really feel about rogue mage players.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. The other thing too. It's very kind of auxiliary. It's an aside to RMP, is that RMP tends to attract like a lot of like younger players, like a lot of the, I don't want to call them like Fortnite players, but there's players who are new to the PvP scene, and they see a comp, they see, they go to the WoW section on Twitch, they see who's the top of the WoW section, they see like Waz and he's streaming RMP, or they see Zaryu, they play RMP. So you have like a lot of younger players playing RMP. And I think that's too where a lot of people kind of get upset. It's like, why can this young player that doesn't have much game experience, like why can they get so high as RP, And I think it's just like, again, it's like kind of the fun, full speed ahead comp in WoW PvP that, of course it's going to attract newer players because it's seen as like this really aggressive, good comp.
Well, I think it falls into that hit and the strike and run aspect as well. I think that also leans to a younger player's mindset.
Yeah.
I think out of younger players, I think that would lean more to what they'd rather play than something that's just pressing W the whole time and just mashing buttons. I don't think they.
Yeah.
Sorry, DKs. Or Ret Pallies. But I think that's not necessarily what today's younger generation would want to play. I don't think they would gravitate to that. I mean, I'm not saying. I guess I'm generalizing. I'm sure there's probably some that would enjoy that, but I think I think the rogue or I guess in the flip side, exactly what you're saying. Like, if I Googled right now World of Warcraft top players, I went to the ladder or something like that. Yeah, pick the first one that comes up to the top. It's probably going to be a rogue or a mage, and then off.
Yeah, and actually, it's just some current news. There's a player right now who's literally rank 1 right now on the North American ladder named Krypton X. I guarantee you, none of you guys have heard of Krypton X. I didn't even know he existed until yesterday. But he's apparently a 14-year-old kid really loves WoW, and he got rank 1 right now as RMP. Like literally rank 1 on the North American ladder is this 14-year-old kid. He streamed. There was a stream last night with Naj, and Olympics was their healer. But it's a comp that it tends to attract a younger player base.
Is
and I
that
think
the kid with the rave where he does like the flamethrower in the back and does like the.
No, that
Okay.
I posted that meme. That I was meaning to meme Calvish is another young player. Calvish is like 15 or something. Like
so half of the 3 men.
Yeah. I mean Calvish is jeez, that guy is an amazing player. Like he plays I don't know how many classes at like rank 1 or gladiator level. Like the guy's absolutely nuts at World of Warcraft. So, but he just happens to be the best at Rogue.
So it's kind of like Peekaboo, isn't it? In a way, like really young, but sort of like just incredibly talented and just very mechanically good. I suppose Waz as well back in the day. Coming up.
They all were.
Yeah. They all the Rogue, iconic Rogue players of the past few years have been like, they had their origins as kind of the young kid on the block, right? With Waz and Peekaboo being younger players at the time, but they just like playing Rogue. Rogue's a fast, high-paced class, and it attracts a younger player base.
Yeah, when on chat, Snuts was super young when he's. Well, I mean, heck, so was Sea-Doo, so was Venruki. I mean, they were minors when they were going to their first tournaments. So I want to point out this is something that was brought up in chat, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. I'm going to throw this to you first, Big. So if you go into the ladder right now and you see a rogue, it's suggested that if you or even if you're on LFG or whatever, if you look that person up on your favorite website of choice, be it Drustvar, be it Check PvP, be it ArenaMate, whatever, and you look up what their history is, it's suggested that in a previous X-Pack they might be sub 2K or just hovering around 2K, and yet here Shadowlands you're looking at last season 3K or so. Now is that arguably you could say that if they're playing a tremendous amount of WoW, that they're obviously they're improving, but arguably counter argument to that would be is if they're playing any other class other than Rogue, or playing RMP, that they likely wouldn't be doing so well this X-Pack compared to less other X-Pack. So I guess my question to you is without knowing anything other than just looking at end of BFA to current season Shadowlands and seeing somebody almost double their season CR, would you say that is indicative of the class and the strength of the comp, or do you say that's indicative of a person's improvement as a player?
I mean, I 100% think that games right now in general are more they're definitely easier to learn than they have been in the past. I think back in the day it was very hard to find. Well, first of all, streams didn't exist pretty much until Wrath of the Lich King, and outside of that, like pretty much the only insight you had into rank 1 gameplay was just watching 14 minutes of PvP video. Now you just have like entire libraries of content to consume, and so I think it becomes more obvious how to play properly. I think some things, with that in mind, I think some things for sure have become easier to do. Like I think the game in itself has become more forgiving in some respects, but at the same time, it still requires like a basic foundation of mechanical skill and game knowledge. And I think that is just really accessible these days. And I think, again, people are just really good at becoming better at games. Like people are good at being good at games now, where in the past it was, again, very hard to get better because it was very unclear what better even looks like. Now it's just like you go to someone's stream or you go to a website of your choice and you can learn so much about your class and so much about the game without even playing it. So I think that kind of has more to do with it than anything else.
I feel the urge to plug that we have an affiliate link for SkillCapped if you really want to see an excellent repertoire of how to play videos and improve your gameplay. Go to skill-cap.com/wow/pricing/plans #technicallypvp.
So
5% discount.
I suppose on that note, does that mean that skill capped is largely to blame for the skill cap of everyone rising now?
It's very funny that you say that, because I think about that often. I'm like, geez, like I don't. I mean, I off the top of my head, I know Skill Cap has had over and I'm not just plugging this because I work for Skill Cap, but I'm just saying Skill Cap has had over 500,000 lifetime users, and I'm thinking to myself, man, that has got to have had some impact on the ladder, right? Because I mean, we have a testimonial section of our Discord, on the Skill Cap Discord, where people say, "Oh, I got 2100, I got 2400 for the first time." And I'm sure a lot of people have, seen improvements that otherwise would have been much more difficult to see in the past.
They have a money back guarantee. I mean, that says something about it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And so, yeah, I think, like, geez, between Skill Capped and Twitch, there's so many avenues for people just improving their gameplay that it's created just this massive arms race of who can get better the fastest by using all these resources.
But I mean, let's even go back further. I mean, that there's all the predecessors to what we have today. Even Arena Junkies, the fledgling YouTube videos. I'm just trying to think. I think there's like some things on WoW movies and that as well. There's all the different videos you can find over. I think there's stuff put up on SK Gaming back in the day as well. Like, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, if you really want to pick somebody, blame Skill Capped for raising the skill cap of everybody.
Yes.
I feel the urge though is to get to that final question that we always like to ask, and that would be the one thing you would change. Because I feel like I think we need to move on, unless there's one other topic or part about RMP that we feel there's a burning desire. Do you have a blazing desire to say anything else, or should we move on to this?
Yeah, I'm just going to say nerf RMP.
There you go.
All right. So that's all right. So Jake, seriously though, what's the one thing you would change about RMP then?
It's a hard question because I play with mages, and I when I think about RMP, I think I think the one thing. Actually, no, I do know what I'd change. The burning thing that kind of drives me nuts is their ability to recover from mistakes. So, like, at least in Shadowlands, conduits that buff. Shields, conduits that buff, sort of like give them like a shield whilst they're inside when they go into stealth for rogues and stuff like that. Reducing, the kind of like survival. First of all, getting rid of res Lego, like that can just go out the window immediately.
Yeah,
I'm done with that thing.
It's one thing you'd change, man. Come on, pick one.
Sorry. Okay, well, I'm going to just say get rid of res Lego because that actually annoys me the most out of everything. So I'm going to say res Lego. I can go.
Res Lego gone. All right. Actually, I'm going to go. I would like for there to be an internal, like a diminishing return or an internal cooldown to the heal of Blazing Barrier. So although
Conduit.
So although they can, the healing side to it. So although blink away, regain your barrier or whatever, but have like even like let's say like a 2-minute cool, like some sort of diminishing return. So if you like, if you click on it, if it triggers, let's say 3 times within a minute, it's on a 2-minute cooldown, so you don't get any healing from it for 2 minutes. I think that should put it in the realm of allowing there to be another target that's killable in the RMP rather than just having to always ignore the mage, other than trying to stop their goes, but not focus rather than just focusing on one target to try to kill. That should give 2 targets to try to kill. Big, what's yours?
Yeah, I generally think like one of the main fixes to mages in general and specifically RMP is just nerfing fire mage survivability. I think it's just way too good. I think that the diverted energy conduit could be nerfed probably considerably in PvP. Other than that, I don't know if fire mages really need a mechanic like alter time. I think alter time is just way too good right now. For a class like fire, or I'm sorry, for a spec like fire, who's already pretty good. So that I think nerfing mages would really nerfing mage defensives rather would really open up a lot of win conditions for comps against RMP, and I think that's kind of key to balancing it, because I truly think that it should be a good comp, but it should be more of a glass cannon. And right now, pretty much the only glass in that comp is the rogue. But even then, the rogue is still decently tanky. Like, it still has really efficient cooldown trades with, trinket, cloak evasion, or trinket vanish. There's so many tools you have right now in rogue, combined with the tools that holy priests have to just prevent their team from dying, that just somewhere in that interaction, the defensives need to be nerfed, and I really think it starts with nerfing the fire mage defensives in any way possible, because I think they're just a bit overtuned.
I don't disagree. All right. I feel like I would love to know what our listeners think on this one. And I know we already have a whole bunch of feedback. So if you guys really want, go to the Twitter or go to our Discord. I know we have a link there as well. There was a tweet that Big put out in preparation to this. So by all means, throw it on there. What you would want, what you see as an issue with Rogue Mage Priest, and what you'd like to see changed. I know there's a whole bunch of other comments already there of our people in the community and what their thoughts are. But I think it's a worthy thread. So feel free to just keep adding your thoughts onto it. And love seeing all the interaction there. In the meantime, let's go into the WoW PvP news and see what's new there. As soon as I click the button right.
All right! Who ordered up an extra large can of whoop ass?
All right. Yes. Who? All right. How about this? Jake. What did you watch any of the AWC in the last 2 weeks? I mean, you were sick there, so you should have had lots of time to be able to watch some of this stuff.
Yeah, I should have done it. I mean, realistically speaking, I should have been watching it, and I did watch a little bit. However, I have a very needy, sick girlfriend who also is stuck in the room with me.
Oh, no.
He was like, "What is this? Why are these small figures running around doing weird stuff at one another?" And I was trying to explain that it was a perfectly acceptable thing to watch, but I couldn't quite watch it aside. I got forced to watch Gossip Girl. We'll leave it at that. But but no, I did watch a few of the games. I didn't watch them all, but I didn't catch the finals, sadly. But
okay,
I watched a fair few of it. So
I think Color, you surprised, but did you know that Kangarna won first place in both for EU Cup 3 and Cup 4?
I did.
And that Kawhi won first place in NA for both those cups. Did you know that?
I'm shocked. I'm shook. I wasn't expecting this news.
No. I will say congrats to both of them. I mean, the top players, top teams. It's not a big surprise that they won, but at the same time, it's quite the achievement. I mean, if you look at their win-loss ratios for all of the 4 cups that happened, like, they're just powerhouses. I am not sure what anybody's going to be able to do come the circuit. I don't know. Was there any games that stood out to either of you, though? Anything in those 2 cups?
Well, sorry, you go ahead, Big.
I mean, focusing away from Kangarna and Kawhi, there is a game, and my friend Jax linked it on Twitter with Aiden's team, and I'm blanking on their name right now, but it's
Unitas.
Aiden Abrua. Yeah, Unitas. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where there is this moment where they're up against Calvish's team, 3.5 men, and no one on Aiden's team, no one on Unitas had Trinket, and everyone on 3.5 men had their Trinket, and it was an RMP mirror. So just like worst case scenario, right? No one on your team has Trinket, the other team has all their trinkets. And oh my gosh, Aiden played so well in this series from the rogue point of view. It was absolutely nuts. And there's this moment where Zico literally says, okay, this is a checkmate situation. 3.5 men has all the trinkets down from Unitas. Unitas has nothing left. Aiden's dead in the next hitting shot. What does Aiden do? He like pre-vanishes the setup from 3.5 men. Like he just uses his vanish, prevents the setup from happening. I think they lost the game anyway, but oh my gosh, Aiden was playing like out of his mind in the RMP mirror, despite his team like being completely set back. And I think that was like my favorite moment from last week's games.
Yeah, Aiden's such an amazing rogue. I don't think he gets quite the credit that he deserves for what he does in some of these games. But
oh yeah, for sure.
On that, I know. I think. Oh shoot! Now I'm gonna brain fart the exact cup. I think it was this week. They Unitas was I think they finished third. Nope, sorry, I'm wrong. They finished fifth. So maybe I'm thinking of the week before. But they were doing they were also doing amazingly well and just increasing their gameplay.
Yeah.
But on that. Okay. Well, on to I think some other things. Hot fixes. So there was I think what was it? We finished our show, and I think there was some hot fixes that came out like 20 minutes after we finished the show. And they just kept rolling. But on that, I'm just trying to think of all the different things that came out that were important. So I think so after last show, the thing that came out was one, the solo shuffle, where the matches were counting for the arena calls skirmishes for the weekly. So that got fixed, so solo shuffle doesn't work for that. And then the Guardian Druid 4-piece, the Architect's Aligner, the healing and damage was reduced by 50% into PvP. Then later on, most recently, that has actually been buffed. So the reduction was moved from 50% to 25%. So that's an effective buff as well. A neat one. This is really cool. So you know that patterns within patterns, the weekly that we have to do at Zereth Mortis?
Yeah.
So, you just have to do at least a few days of dailies and kill a few bosses and maybe grab a couple chests, and then you got enough stuff to rack into that. So this week they made a slight hotfix. So there's a war mode PvP quest that comes along with that. That's called A New Deal, and I guess when you complete that quest, it contributes a huge portion, a large portion of progress to patterns within patterns, such that
nice.
I think you can finish it like in a day. So I think that's amazing. Let's hear what else is. Your favorite trinket there, Big, the Cosmic Gladiators Aegis. It's been nerfed, man.
I don't care about that trinket. I think that trinket's troll. But I don't know. I don't know why people like that trinket so much. I think the trinket I was obsessed about was the Echoing Resolve, which is the CC immunity one. But the Aegis is the spell damage absorption.
Yeah,
and I guess it's good, but I really think that in many cases, Battlemaster is just better defensively. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm stupid, but I think BM Trinket is still really good as a general defensive trinket option. That I don't care that this thing was nerfed. Whatever. I still think BM is just really good.
Echoing Resolve is a nightmare. I hate all of these trinkets. It's so annoying.
I am really shocked that Echoing Resolve hasn't been nerfed yet. I think that is jeez. I mean, I would be absolutely flabbergasted if that isn't nerfed within 2 weeks. I think it's long overdue, but anyway, at least it's making Warlocks semi-viable.
So I was actually kind of surprised because I thought the Cosmic Gladiator really existed just as a counter to the other trinket with the Cosmic
Resonator.
The Cosmic Resonator there.
Yeah.
So, but I guess the shield was a bit more than it needed to be. So I guess that makes sense. But yeah. Trying to think what else. Holy Ward. The cooldown was increased by 15 seconds to 45, and the duration was decreased to 15 seconds. So it was 30 seconds before that. Now it's only 15. Plus that the 4-piece for Holy Priest was effectiveness was reduced by 40%, and Demonology got pretty much gutted. If anybody wants to know more about that, just head over to the Twitter of Lika, and you'll hear all about how Demonology is unplayable nowadays.
Yeah.
Other news. I think this is the best news I've heard all week. The Conquest cap. It was increased to 1,100. So
Nice.
Yeah. So I think.
I was gonna say, as an aside, I really, really, really wish they had increased the amount of rewards you get from 2v2 queues. Because I mean, I'm biased. I'm at pretty much only in Q2s, but it takes an absurdly long time to cap both your vault and your conquest from 2v2 alone. It's like, oh my goodness, you're sitting there for multiple hours, and it just did not feel fun. So I really hope that they somehow scale conquest rewards slightly better based on bracket, because I did 3 RBGs last night. I just joined some YOLO groups, and within the hour of just being in these groups, I completely capped my conquest, completely capped my vault. Like, it was dumb how quick it was just within 3 RBGs compared to multiple hours worth of 2 SKUs.
Yeah.
So hopefully they somehow scale the rewards of 2v2 or even 3v3, because geez, I'd love to see that.
I honestly feel like that was done on purpose because of how little people were queuing RBGs in BFA, and really like the pool of players reduced quite significantly from Legion to BFA. That I think that they did it on purpose to try and incentivize more people to play into RBGs. But I think on the flip side, people just don't want to. Sorry, what was that?
I think. Well, the thing is, I think it's a great incentive. Like, it means that people will play, but I think really what if they really wanted to. My opinion on RBGs is that if they really wanted to get to incentivize people, they would make better rules than just hero. So,
yeah.
But I think I would love to see better rewards from twos. I think it's such a shame that they got rid of Gladiator from it as well. Nothing in it.
I mean, two is a very controversial bracket. People have very strong feelings towards 2v2, but I mean, I enjoy it. I think it's really fun. I mean, I play Resto Druid, so probably why. But it just feels kind of lame that it's a bracket that rewards you literally the least. Like, of course, I don't really care that it doesn't reward Gladiator. I think it probably should, but the fact that it's just for capping your vault, it's so slow. I mean, that's the worst part about it. Is you feel like you just get put so far behind by not playing 3v3 or RBGs if you just play 2s only.
Yeah. But you get your vicious mount from 2s, right?
I don't even know last time I've spent one of those tokens. Those tokens, that's like going to Chuck E. Cheese and getting the world's worst reward, those vicious saddles. I don't even know what those are for anymore.
Yeah, but way too many.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I don't even know.
I feel like I baited you too easy on that.
Yeah.
All right. Big, while you're on a roll, do you have any shout outs?
Yeah. Shout out to anyone who's made an add-on it was contributed to an add-on in Shadowlands because, geez, Louise, the metagame has gravitated so much towards using every single add-on possible that I think PvP would be a wildly different experience if these add-on authors didn't exist. I know people, again, have very differing attitudes towards things like weak auras and whatever, but so many add-ons right now are so fundamental to how the game is played, and so shout out to the add-on authors who, in many cases, don't receive a dime for their work. So shout out to them.
Very true. Just on that, did you see the some of the Twitter stuff about people asking for weak auras to get broken so it stops working?
Yeah, I saw there was even some PvEers who were talking about that. And I would tend to agree. I think weak auras is just way too good for how it's able to do so many things and telegraph the most important information in the most obvious way possible. I think, yeah, it's due for some sort of change. I don't know. I think it's personally way too busted.
Yeah. I would argue that the UI needs a redo, the generic one, because an add-on like that is so prolific because of how much of an issue we all have reading all the information that's being presented. It's almost too much. Well, it's not almost. It is too much information.
Yeah.
Jake, what is your shout out for the day?
I'm going to shout out to every single person that has been absolutely one-banged by RMP this expansion. So, stay strong, kings and queens. Do what you can, but the rain isn't coming to end soon. So I feel for you. That's myself included, obviously.
Enjoy getting banged. That sounds so wrong. All right, I'm gonna shout out to Zoli, Polgi, Hope, and Sidon. Those were the other 4 players that joined me for the MDI push. Big shout out to those 4 other players for putting up with me and for trying so hard to push some 15s. Really appreciate y'all. All right, I'm gonna throw it back to you, Big. Would you be able to list off where the listener, actually, no, both of you, but I'll start with Big. Where can our listeners reach us?
Yeah, sure. So you can contact us directly with a tweet to @technically_PvP or by an email to technicallypvp@gmail.com. You can also join our discussions on the Warcraft Radio Discord.
You also can visit the Warcraft Radio website to find the podcast directory with us and many other great shows at warcraftradio.com. This new directory also has a review system, so head over there and tell everyone what you think of your favorite shows.
Indeed. And link for those and everything else we talked about is in the show notes. We want to thank you all for listening, and we'll chat with you next time. Good night, everybody.
Good night.